Hi there, this is Danny Flexen. Welcome to the latest edition of SecondsOut FLEXpectations. We're here every Thursday, 4:30 PM, to talk about the boxing action over the weekend. And this weekend, the big show, if you can call it that, is the DAZN show in the US, headlined by Devin Haney, defending the WBC lightweight title against Yuriorkis Gamboa. There's a lot of attention on this main event fight, predominantly because we're not far removed from the changing of the guard at lightweight as a whole, as Teofimo Lopez upset the odds and beat Vasily Lomachenko for the other three major belts. Now, that's brought Haney's name into the spotlight to an extent, in that he holds the other major belt that wasn't on the line, the WBC. And the Lomachenko-Lopez fight was for the WBC franchise title. So technically it wasn't an undisputed clash, although Top Rank and ESPN didn't make a big deal of that fact. In fact, they decided to market it as an undisputed fight, even though it really wasn't. Perhaps it should have been, but that's a completely different argument. So this has brought a lot more attention onto Haney, and a lot of the questions in this week's media, both face-to-face and the conference calls of which I was a part, focused on Loma Lopez and, I guess, reunifying all four major belts. Haney was bullish about his chance. He believes, and promoter Eddie Hearn, who was on the call, seems to believe that he's the best lightweight in the world, and that if Lopez does stay at 135 pounds, which is open for debate, Haney would like that fight and would like to capture all the titles. He was certainly putting his name out there and chasing Lomachenko before the Ukrainian was unseated, so there's no reason to doubt Haney's confidence. All of which makes it all the more irritating that he's fighting Gamboa in this fight. Now, we know there's a pandemic, we know it's hard to get opponents, but I don't believe that Gamboa, even though he's got some name value still, was the best that they could do. You know, if you're going to be calling out Lopez and Lomachenko, if you're going to be saying you're the true world champion, even if you're just 21 years old and you haven't, had completed your apprenticeship necessarily, once you win a world title, they say there's no going back and you have to fight, quality level opposition. Now, Gamboa, 5 years ago, was a quality opponent at featherweight, or, pushing it at super featherweight. He was an Olympic gold medalist in 2004, 16 years ago, and funnily enough, he's about 16, 17 years older than Haney at 38. Guys in the lighter weight classes don't tend to age well anyway, and Gamboa turned over a bit later than a lot of others because he's a Cuban and they tend to stay amateur for longer. He defected quite late on and then was able to turn over and looked amazing on the way up early on at featherweight, destroying people, had flair and skill and agility and great footwork, which he still has. And we were all really impressed with him. But as he went up through the weight classes, he started to get overpowered, and his skills and his sharp punching didn't have as much effect against the heavier and stronger opposition. Terence Crawford, that was a memorable fight. Crawford's toughest fight to date at that point. Gamboa buzzed him early, won a few of the early rounds as well. His speed certainly gave Crawford trouble. But once Bud got the measure of his opponent and started timing him coming in, there was only going to be one winner, and he stopped Gamboa, who has since been further beaten inside schedule by Robinson Castellanos, who's a good fighter, one with not the best record on paper, but a talented fighter. And then Gervonta Tank Davis last time out. And Tank Davis dropped Gamboa, I think, 4 times. Gamboa said that he tore his right Achilles tendon early in the fight and certainly seemed impaired by an injury from quite early on. But the fact remains that Gamboa, whether he's 38 or even 5 years ago, has got no business being up as high as 135 pounds. He could probably still make featherweight. A lot of his lightweight fights, he's come in closer to the super featherweight limit. He's only won 4 of his last 6, and 2 of those, the wins, were very close. So you can make an argument that he's not on particularly good form. He's not fighting brilliant opposition in his victories either. When he is stepping up for, the likes of Davis and now Haney, he tends to lose, and lose pretty conclusively. So it's not a great opponent for Haney. If he hadn't won the world title and he was still a fringe contender, keeping busy during a pandemic, it'd be a lot more acceptable and understandable. But now he has that famous green belt and he's looking to fight the likes of Lopez or Lomachenko or even Tank Davis himself, Ryan Garcia, Luke Campbell. I mean, you've got someone like Ryan Garcia fighting a better opponent, having not yet won a world title, than Haney, who is a reigning world champion, and a much better opponent than that. I mean, Luke Campbell, streets ahead of Gamboa at this stage of their respective careers, both former amateur stars, of course. Campbell a lot younger and a lot fresher, and fighting in his, genuine weight class. Campbell's quite a big lightweight, and Gamboa really should still be at feather or super feather. You would back Campbell heavily, I would think, to beat Gamboa at lightweight at this stage of their careers, and yet he's the test for Ryan Garcia for an interim title. And Ryan Garcia is a young guy, hasn't fought anyone amazing just yet. There's no real difference between him and Haney except the belt, which means there should be a greater demand on Haney to face better opposition. And if I've hit it well, it might be quite subtle, but I don't like this fight. It's not a good, and it's not even about DAZN and the main event for US fans, which obviously it's not a great main event for TV, but it's not about that. It's more about Haney's development. This isn't doing him any favours either. It gives fans who are already critical of him for no fault of his own, getting the WBC title without beating someone for it, another reason to discredit him, because now he has got the belt and he presumably has some level of say over who he defends it against. He's going to get someone that I don't think there's anyone out there that I've seen on social media or in personal conversations who are predicting the upset. And the same could be said for the rest of the card, but they're not world title fights. The likes of Filip Hrgovic and Zhilei Zhang, they need to still beat people they're expected to beat and to keep busy, and they'll be built up for their big fights. Haney should already be there, even though he's only 21. I think that mitigation and that level of forgiveness for his tender age and his lack of experience, I think that all comes to an end once you win a world title or awarded a world title, however we want to describe it. And I feel sorry for him in a way, because he might not have had much say in the opponent, even given Gamboa. But I think on one of the conference calls, Eddie Hearn said something like, Tank Davis has just had his big test against Leo Santa Cruz. Ryan Garcia gets his against Luke Campbell. Well, this is Devin Haney's. Well, I'm not sure that is Tank Davis's big test for a start. Leo Santa Cruz boxed really well, but again was undersized, similar to this fight. But this is certainly not Haney's kind of ascent to world level fight, or at least elite world level. Gamboa was a world level fighter at featherweight. He was a fringe contender at super feather, and maybe a belt holder. But he's neither of those things at lightweight, despite the Tank fight being for a version of the WBA belt. Haney might not have had much say in it, but he'll get the majority of the criticism for it, because people are already kind of criticising him for other things, and they'll use this as another stick to beat him with. And I don't think that's entirely fair. But I don't know, maybe he's in a difficult position, because if he'd have come out on one of the conference calls or one of the interviews and said, do you know what, I should be expected to go in there, take this guy apart, and win easily. He's not the best opponent. He's not an elite level fighter anymore, but I have to keep busy. It's the best opponent available, and I'm going to do my best to put on a show. I think fans would have been a lot more willing to accept. But if you do that, then are people going to tune in? Are you, failing to promote your own fight on TV? I understand why he wouldn't say that. And he's young, but he knows the game well. He works with his dad, of course, and they both know the game well. And you've got to make your opponent sound as good as possible, so that that you get people tuning in, of course, but also so that when you defeat them, hopefully in spectacular fashion from his point of view, you can say you beat someone credible, someone good. If you discredit your opponent before the fight's even started and you struggle in any way, it has the opposite effect. So I completely get it, but that doesn't mean I have to like it. I think Haney needs to get this one out of the way with the minimum of fuss and look as good as possible. Tank Davis, a lot of people calling that a one-sided fight, saying that he was easily expected to beat Leo Santa Cruz. But after the fight, all anyone was talking about was the spectacular KO, the knockout of the year. And that bodes well for Davis and for Haney, because if Haney can win in spectacular fashion, either by a massive knockout or just a dazzling performance that, brings people to mind some of the greats of the past, then hopefully, for his sake, that's what people will be talking about on Sunday morning, and not how overmatched and, the injustice of Gamboa getting another title shot at a weight class he's not really suited for. We shall see what the reaction is, and we can talk about that in Reflections on Monday, which is at 4:30 p.m. Neat segue there. And I'll be back for the next FLEXpectations next Thursday at 4:30 p.m. If you guys can comment below, that'd be really helpful. Just tell me what you think of the fight and the card as a whole. And if there is anyone out there that feels Gamboa's in with a chance, or that it's a better fight than I'm giving it credit for, tell me why, please. I don't want it to be that I'm this hater who doesn't like all things either Matchroom or Haney. I actually really like Haney. I met him in London last year. He's a really great guy. I loved his ambition and his attitude. And I don't dislike Hearn either, by the way, or Matchroom. But just tell us why this is a better fight than I'm giving it credit for. Really appreciate it. And I'll see you all soon. Cheers.